shall not be infringed. That's pretty cut and dry, which is the way the founders intentionally wrote the Second Amendment. For whatever reason, there's some belief that if you disarm the law-abiding populace or make it more difficult for them to own a firearm, you are making the public more safe, as if lawbreakers were going to comply with the law. I've introduced this bill, constitutional carry, a similar bill that has been law for years in Bernie Sanders' home state of Vermont. It provides that any law-abiding citizen may carry openly or conceal their handgun for self-defense. You know, I think we all believe it's our God-given right to protect ourselves, our family, and our children. Again, law-abiding, if you vote down this measure, no amount of spin can deflect from the fact that you are taking away an individual's right to self-defense. Time and again, average citizens stop horrific crimes because they are well armed. I know that many of you believe in total reliance on the state, but the state demonstrates almost daily that it can't do everything all the time. Sometimes the only way a crime is prevented in time is for the potential victim having the ability to protect themselves. I urge you to consider the moms, dads, everyday people throughout the Commonwealth who need to protect themselves. Voting against this bill is a vote against them.
Thank you, Delegate Dwyer. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the bill? You're up. Go ahead.
I defer to Mr. Brinkley, sir.
Okay. Well, I mean, you were first up, so why don't you come up while he walks up?
Hi guys, I'm David Decker. I strongly agree with this bill.
Thank you.
Yes, for reasons articulated, we firmly support the Phil Van Cleve VCDL. We firmly support this bill.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mariah Rowland. I'm a resident of Louisa County. I'm a mother and grandmother. I can tell you I carry every day. I had to get my concealed carry, which is fine, but the reason I needed it isn't because I was going to do anything crazy. It's because I wear a coat or a sweatshirt. You know how easy it is for a garment of clothing to cover your firearm, and now you're committing a crime just because you were being fashionable or warm? If I can legally carry my firearm in an open carry where you can see it, what's the difference in my sweatshirt or jacket covering it? I urge you all to consider the law-abiding citizens that you are accidentally making criminals. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to the committee. My name is Omari Faulkner. I'm a candidate here in Virginia for U.S. Senate. I urge you to consider this bill and pass it. I heard you say before, Mr. Chairman, that these bills, impact communities of color. I came from a community of color, and I want to say that I'm a father of 4 little girls, and to have the opportunity to protect those 4 little girls and protect my family is incumbent upon these types of laws, and they do not affect communities of color. So I would really encourage the entire committee to look at this law, study it, ask questions, debate on it, because Virginians really depend on it. We really do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matthew Pomeroy. I live in Cabana County, and I'd just like to express my strong support in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, having deferred to others, the young lady stole my thunder. I can carry as I am now, but if I want to put a coat on, I have to go get a permit. It's ridiculous. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sidney Dement. I live in the north side of Richmond. I support this bill as well. Living in Richmond for the last 15 years, it's no secret that there is a lot of crime that happens in this area, especially in the north side region. After an attempted break-in in my home about 3 months ago, when Richmond police responded and I simply asked them what I can do to help defend myself, they shrugged their shoulders and said, buy a gun. Essentially, the law enforcement here has kind of told me I'm on my own. So any means for me to be able to protect myself within the city of Richmond is something I consider and support wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Anyone else speak in favor of the bill? Anyone speak in opposition?
Chairman, Andrew Garrard, Virginia Central Public Safety. The term constitutional carry is a little misleading. At the time when the Constitution was written, carrying a concealed weapon was considered to be something that only a criminal would do. And most states still have the law which says you are not allowed to carry a concealed weapon in public. The only exemption that was given was to certain individuals who could demonstrate that they were not going to be a threat by obtaining a permit. We're not against the concealed carrying of weapons, but we would rather like people to carry a permit or get a permit so that we know who is carrying concealed weapons, have been checked out by the government or checked out by their background. So we're we're not opposed to concealed carry. We're certainly opposed to the situation where nobody would know whether that person was otherwise allowed to carry that firearm. Makes it totally ambiguous, and I don't believe we should have ambiguous bills.
Good morning, my name is Lori Haas, I'm with Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. We oppose the bill. As the gentleman before me suggested, the ability of law enforcement to ascertain who is and who isn't a good guy with a gun or a bad guy with a gun. We don't know. Persons carrying firearms often have ill intent. We just strongly oppose this bill on so many levels. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Nikki Zmowski, Deputy Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security, and for the reasons already articulated, we oppose this bill.
Thank you. Doug McGuire, quick last word?
Well, I would just say that we had thousands and thousands of people here yesterday who were law-abiding citizens, and I would say that there are way more good guys than there are bad guys. And the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
Thank you. Bring it back to the committee for discussion. Delegate Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, today, we trust Virginians to carry firearms open carry. No class, no nothing. You can go down, you can buy it, you do the background check to acquire your weapon, and you can carry it. But God forbid the woman wants to put it in her purse, the man wants to be able to carry it in his waistband, a coat accidentally falls over that firearm, and now they're a felon. For some reason, we trust you to open carry, but we don't trust you to carry in a purse, which is kind of crazy. And Mr. Chairman, when you mentioned that in communities of color, and if when people talk all the time about selective enforcement, a simple coat falling over a firearm all of a sudden gives the ability for someone to get arrested. Just simple actions like that. So what I'm asking here and what the delegate's asking for, Mr. Chairman, is just that we allow the same person we trust to be able to carry outside the waistband, to be able to carry inside their purse. And if anyone thinks that simple firearm safety course you have to take online makes a difference in the world, you haven't seen the course yet. Because it teaches you to point in a safe direction, which may not be down because you can be standing over top of someone. Trust me, carrying a firearm is common sense. We have laws for those that use it illegally, but there's no difference in carrying the waistband as opposed to carrying in a purse, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion. Delegate Hunter.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question of the delegate?
Go ahead.
The delegate stated that for the safety of moms, dads, and everyday people, we need to pass this bill. A 2014 study by the U.S. National Library of Medicine and National Institutes of Health looked at the liberalization of concealed carry, institution of constitutional carry in Arizona, and found that there was an 11% increase in gun homicides after the passage of that bill. A 2015 study in the Harvard-Boston University Hospital researchers found that firearm assaults were 6.8 times more common in states with the most guns, and a Scientific American analysis of 15 studies found that the people who had access to firearms in their homes were almost twice as likely to be murdered than those that didn't. Wouldn't a vote against this bill be far more likely to result in the safety of moms, dads, and everyday people than one that increased the availability of firearms for concealed carry without training in the Commonwealth of Virginia?
I don't know where you got this data, but I do know that where we have the strictest gun laws, I would say that where we have the strictest gun laws, Chicago, Baltimore, Washington, and even Richmond, there's more gun deaths. And it's our God-given right to protect ourselves, our family, and our children.
Further discussion. Delegate Price.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask of the delegate, does the concealed carry permitting process preclude someone from carrying a weapon for protection?
No.
Just to speak to the delegate suggested amendments earlier, to amend the bill as the patron intends, I'd have to make several amendments. It's not just merely striking resident, replacing with person on line 54. It would also be striking resident on line 56 after obtain striking resident on line 56 after such and replacing with person, and then updating the cross-reference on line 57 from subsection B of 18.2308.2 to also the non-resident section. I'm just making the committee aware, so if the amendments look a little bit different than what was suggested, that is to get to the intent of what the patron wants.
Understood. Further discussion from the committee. I would just say that the committee operates by motion.
Motion to lay on the table, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved and properly seconded to lay the bill on the table. Clerk will open the roll, and then we will vote on electronic voting machine. Thank you, Delegate Dwyer. Delegate Dwyer, you have House Bill 162 and Delegate Campbell is very similar to House Bill 1382. You want to come up and join your colleague here? You've been talking for a while. Let's let Delegate Campbell present. And you can add on anything you miss. Mr. Davis, please say the word. Go ahead, Delegate Campbell.
Be happy to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I appreciate your service here. I obviously served on this committee over the last couple of years. I understand how difficult it can be. Let me also say that, as many of you are aware, there are various proposals making their way through the General Assembly. One is advanced in the Senate that would provide the localities would be able to enact ordinances that would prohibit the possession of firearms within public buildings or in public events. And let me say this much, I think everyone sitting around this table, and certainly probably everyone in this room, entertains the idea that we ought to do something about public safety and about reducing gun violence. I think everyone believes fully in that, and I think that's why you're here. We obviously just disagree about the means with which best to achieve that very laudable goal. And the purpose of my bill in evaluating those proposals with respect to localities, I became concerned by the fact that whether or not localities that in fact ban these firearm possessions would enact reasonable security measures to ensure that the public is safe from someone that might not, quite frankly, follow the law. And so, as you all know, and I will say this much, I was pleased to see that at least the proposal that is advanced in the Senate does contain a provision that requires localities to adopt security measures. But having been a trial lawyer for 20 years, I've certainly learned over time that the best and strongest encouragement to imposing a duty and make sure that the person carries out that duty in a reasonable and conscientious manner is to impose liability upon the person pursuant to that duty. And as all of you are aware, I'm sure localities, depending upon the nature of the locality, whether it's a county, a city, or a town, and the function they're undertaking, enjoy some level of sovereign immunity. And so my concern there is that if we don't impose some liability upon the locality that's undertaking that effort, then I think we're compromising public safety by simply allowing them to carry it out in a negligent manner. So that the purpose of my bill obviously is to rescind that sovereign immunity with respect to that provision.
Delegate Dwyer, anything to add?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So I call this the Kate Nixon Act, after a wife who wasn't allowed to carry her weapon to work was killed in May in the Virginia Beach shooting. But basically, it ways that the local government to shield itself behind sovereign immunity if someone becomes a victim of violent crime in a gun-free zone. This bill probably should be called "Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is At." Throughout the Commonwealth, gun-free zones have been erected as a way to take away a law-abiding citizen's right to defend themselves. Current law provides if anyone, God forbid, is hurt by a violent act in a gun-free zone, that person or the surviving family cannot sue. If politicians are so convinced that gun-free zones work, they protect the public, then why the heck is there a need for this law? Sovereign immunity should be waived in this instance. If you are a victim of a crime in a gun-free zone, you should be able to hold the local government accountable for preventing you the ability to self-defense. It's common sense. Voting against this bill does nothing but make one a hypocrite. Ladies and gentlemen, the fact is this law doesn't work. It doesn't protect or shield anyone here today. I have someone here to share their story, and it's Ms. Nixon's husband, and I'd like to have him speak on that tragedy about his wife.
Just real quick, have you concluded your remarks? All right, so is there anybody here to speak in favor of the bill? Come on up, identify yourself.
My name is Jason Nixon. My wife was murdered on May 31st last year. I have 3 daughters. I have a 1-year-old, I have a 7-year-old, and a 13-year-old. I cry at home every night when we get at night. I don't sleep a lot because I'm always thinking of what I can do to make their lives better. When my wife was killed the night before, she was worried about another shooter, another employee that was disgruntled. I told her to take my gun to work that day. She said, no, it's against city policy. I'll lose my job. My wife was second in charge of public utilities. She was a very high, powerful person in the city. She obeyed the laws, she obeyed the rules, and she's dead now. My wife's been murdered. All I'm asking, the families are asking, you know, it was really sneaky the way the city of Virginia Beach and the state snuck this law in where you only have 6 months to file a letter of intent. We haven't even got the Virginia Beach Police investigation report yet. We had a Howard Hines report, which is a private investigation, which was a farce. It didn't do anything that we wanted. It wasn't an investigation we asked for as a report. How can you tell somebody you only have 6 months to file a letter of intent to seek legal recourse and preserve that right? That's not fair. The sovereign immunity law comes from the old English law, the king can do no harm. Are we that archaic? We're in 2020. Why do we have these laws in our books? Why haven't we amended this? And I'm not saying get rid of the law totally. I'm saying amend the law to where it specifically caters towards gun violence. If you're telling my wife that she has to go into a gun-free zone under city policies or state policies, and you can't protect her, and you bar her the right from protecting herself, is that fair? Is that fair to do that to somebody that can't protect themselves? I agree. If you want to have a gun-free zone, great. Put stipulations in. Make protocols, procedures. Make it a gun-free zone. Put metal detectors out there, security guards. We knew the day before that there was a disgruntled worker. He was police escorted out of the building. He was police escorted back in the next morning to be officially fired. The shooter, Dwayne, knew this was going on. That's why he waited till Friday to kill everybody, because of police presence. Why did the police presence stay out that whole week and protect my wife? What makes Building 2 different from the courthouse, public school systems? I mean, it doesn't make sense. And what doesn't make sense is like now, I'm one of 4 families that filed a letter of intent. You have all these other families that didn't know anything about letter of intent, and now they're upset, and they're disgusted with the way the system's working right now, and it's not fair. It's not fair that you're holding our hands behind our back saying we don't have the right to seek legal recourse. My wife was a public utilities worker. It was a thankless job, but it was a necessary job to create an infrastructure for the city. If you don't have an infrastructure, you don't have a city. All I'm asking you to do is use common sense. I'm starting a nonprofit organization called Virginia Strong. I've got Derek Nottie, NFL player, going to Super Bowl this weekend on February 2nd. I've got Bruce Smith sponsoring me. I've got Aaron Rouse sponsoring me. I've got a lot of people that stand behind me. Kevin McCarthy's a family friend of Kate's out in Bakersfield. People are standing behind this. It doesn't make sense to say you can't have the right to legal recourse. And I'm not saying take it away. Keep your sovereign immunity if that's what you need to do. But amend it. Amend it. You're not going to have frivolous lawsuits, which everybody's afraid of. Everybody's afraid of the state and the city to have frivolous lawsuits. Well, is my wife's murder frivolous? Is that frivolous to you? Is that frivolous to anybody? It's not. Those circumstances are totally different from everything else. About defamation of character, about car accidents. That has nothing to do with a firearm killing my wife when she went to work. That's not fair. And all I'm asking for, and all the families are asking for, is to amend this. Just amend the law. Make it common sense. I'm working with Kelly Flower. She's a Democrat. I'm friends with Jeffrey Bryant, the governor's lawyer. I'm friends with Jason Maris, the Republicans. I'm friends with John McGuire, Republican. You guys have lost sight about politics. It's not about my side's better than yours and my side's better than yours. Democrats have control. So let's see what they do with it. Let's compromise, let's work together. It doesn't make sense. In order to run a self-sufficient government, you have to compromise. Now, I'm gonna go on record and tell you, I'm not for silencers. I wanna see them banned. Because if that guy hadn't wielded that silencer that day, my wife would be alive right now. And I'll go on record saying that. But I'm also, for the Second Amendment, and I'm also a gun owner. But you've gotta have compromise. And it doesn't make sense to me that we can't have any recourse. Everybody's afraid of, okay, I heard something about where the bond rate would go down. So what? Well, why would a bond rate go down? How many gun lawsuits would ever be? How many? Not very many. We're not talking about a huge wave of lawsuits coming at the city and the municipals and state. We're talking about gun violence. We're talking about my wife going to work that day leaving her 3 children at home, doing her job on a daily basis, a thankless job, and being murdered. She called me at 4:06 in the afternoon. I have the text message to show to you on my phone. She said, Jason, I've been shot, call 911. Well, I didn't get to tell her I loved her. I didn't say run. I didn't say hi. I didn't get to tell her anything. And it tears me up every day I think about this. And then the police lied to me. They told me that the homicide detectives came back and said Kate was shot 3 times. Well, the autopsy report said she was shot 4 times. And she had abrasions and bruises on her wrists and hands because she fought. You know, Josh Hardy fought. He was shot 10 times. He protected Kate, and they worked together. There's a lot of heroes that day that no one even knows about. And all I want you guys to do is take some common sense and look at what we're asking. I'm not asking you guys to do anything different. I'm not asking you to take away a law. You want to keep an archaic law back to the king? Go ahead. But I want to ask you this. Are we creating more kings? Are we now the serfs? Are we creating more kings under this law? Is it fair? I don't think so. I think that you have to really look at this with common sense and say, well, gee, let me think. Okay, that works for this, and this works for that. Well, let's compromise. If someone's killed by a gun under a gun-free zone, then let's make that a compromise. Let's say, okay, yes, you have the right. You have the right to seek legal recourse. Because I never get my wife back. My children aren't getting their mother back. And I'm angry. And so are the other families. We're all angry. You know, I just want to make sure y'all understand. It's not about politics. This is about a human thing to do. This is about right from wrong. It's not fair. Tax-paying citizens don't have the right to protect themselves or seek legal recourse if they're taking that right away. And that's all I'm trying to say. And please, if you guys have any idea of what I'm trying to push to you guys, you'll see what I'm trying to do. I have the USA Today call me today, asking what my results are going to be today. I have the People magazine. I have Washington Post. I have everybody, CNN, Brian Todd from CNN's called me this morning. Everybody wants to know what y'all are going to do with this. And I want to make sure that y'all do the right thing. We're not asking for anything special. We're asking to be treated like decent people.
We've got a bunch more people to have to certainly.
Oh, I could speak forever. And I'll be up here January 28th speaking for a state investigation too.
I imagine. Certainly our heart, thoughts and prayers go out to you for your loss and everybody in Virginia Beach. It's certainly a tragedy. And certainly we thank you for coming out here and advocating.
I really appreciate it. It's the first time I ever spoke to y'all. I've been in the media a lot, but I haven't spoken to you guys. And I wanted, you know, I got a phone call at 1 o'clock yesterday, and I drove up here. I got a hotel room. I stayed the night so I could be here on time.
Thank you.
And I had my kids taken care of. My mother-in-law flew in, so everybody worked together, make us work to get me here. It's not easy running 3 kids, you know, juggling that. But just use your common sense. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
I'm not asking for anything special.
Who's next speaking in favor of it?
He can talk all day. My name's Robert Rink, you've met me before. Again, we keep looking at, let's go for the original issue that we should fix so it doesn't cascade down the road. I have the privilege of working with ladies who've been harmed by domestic violence. A dear friend who has found her freedom because she could conceal, because she could carry a weapon, take the training, and wherever she went, she has it with her. My wife's the same way. My 2 daughters are the same way. As we have shared, these dear ladies have been harmed. They are susceptible to lawbreakers. We put up the sign like we say, don't bring your gun in here. Those fellas that were after my dear friends, they don't care about the sign. They thank you for that sign. The dear lady leaves her gun because it's her protection and he's been staying away from her. She goes to a zone that's been established by the locality and she's killed. And so this desire on this part to say, if you're gonna allow them to do that, you've gotta think of your dear ladies and those people that are susceptible. That restraining order is not the only thing that set them free. They're free because they're carrying. And you're gonna take that away and they're gonna go into a designated gun-free zone with no protection. So obviously this makes total sense, that if you allow that to happen, you step up to the plate to protect my friends, my wife, my kids, my daughters. We have these armed protections for things that are precious to us, like, you know, nuclear power plants, like these buildings. My kids, as he shared, the most precious thing in the world is my daughter and my wife. In addition, what he says makes total sense. If you're going to do this, you're responsible. If harm comes, you should care for those that were harmed. Thank you very much.
Next.
Philip Van Cleve, Virginia Citizens Defense League. Yes, we strongly support the bill. You should be able to protect yourself wherever you go. Your life should be just as valuable on one side of the line as another. But if you're going to do this, this kind of a change to the law would at least give localities incentive, or whoever's doing this, to put up some real security, not just throw up a sign, some real solid security. Then they don't have to worry about any of this coming true. But it gives them an incentive. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, Bob Sadler, South Richmond. I'm not what you think. I'm not a cowboy. I don't want to play cop. I don't want to play cowboy. When I carry it, it's for my personal protection. I'm not going to act unless there is an attacker in my personal sphere. If it's a spray killing, I'm going to be the best witness I can. I'm not interested in being a new sheriff in town. When you strip me of my right to protect my personal sphere, you assume obligation for protecting my personal sphere. If you think otherwise is justice, then someone needs to buy you a dictionary. And in closing, I find it fascinating that you want to offer Mr. Nixon thoughts and prayers, because when your opponents were in charge, that was hollow, meaningless rhetoric and an insult. Fascinating. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Amari Faulkner, and again, thoughts and prayers for your entire family. I rise in support of the bill for the simple fact that we can't continue to have soft targets, that are unsafe in our country and throughout our Commonwealth. There needs to be some type of protocols put in place for gun-safe zones. I mean, that law needs to change. Again, like I said, I have 4 daughters, all of which are in school in public places. They currently don't have a whole lot of security in place if something were to happen. Again, we cannot allow places and people to be sitting ducks that cannot protect themselves. It's just not safe across the Commonwealth, and I think this bill deserves some debate and possibly a reboot button as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Real quick.
Members of the committee, Mr. Chairman. Earlier we talked about places of worship. We just finished the holiday of Hanukkah. A lot of religious activities take place in public and permitted spaces. If a locality is going to leave a religious community defenseless, then I fully support this bill. Create the obligation to actually take measures to protect it. Don't make it hollow. Don't leave people defenseless.
Thank you. Anybody speak in opposition to the bill?
Good morning, my name is Lori Haas. I'm with the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. We oppose the bills, but not for the reasons, many of the reasons stated here. Sovereign immunity is a big, large legal question that needs to be debated, possibly. For 12 years, I've stood in this building and in many of these committees and in front of many of you, like the gentleman before me, pleading and pleading and pleading for laws that will save lives in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Laws that have been proven in other states to reduce gun deaths and reduce gun violence. It's been 12 long years. Reactions after a gun death don't carry much weight in my book. We need to do all we can to reduce gun violence in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We need to save lives. We need to look at the data. We need to look at the facts and the research. And states with strong gun laws have far fewer gun deaths. I have the utmost sympathy and compassion for every family in the Commonwealth that lives with this scourge every single day. Almost 3 Virginians lose their lives to guns. Countless others suffer from gun violence. There have been families in this building pleading for years to have this issue addressed, as this gentleman has done this morning. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Common sense.
others in this room have been, and other families affected by gun violence over these many, many years. I appreciate everyone in this room. Thank you.
Chairman Andrew Goddard, Virginia Center for Public Safety. The gentleman who spoke to you before and I came here for the same reason. Because we've both been involved. I was a lot luckier than he was, and I have every sympathy for his situation. I support any measures that would have been done in advance to stop his wife from being killed. As simple as that. If it needs metal detectors, if it needs a policeman in every door, every window, every place in the building, and that's the only thing we can do, then I support that. But we have not made attempts to prevent this. No amount of money, paid whether sovereign immunity is in place or not, would bring this man's wife back. This is a bill about sovereign immunity, not about changing the way, the circumstances that led to his wife's death. If we were going to change those circumstances, I would be absolutely in favor. The sovereign immunity issue, my son was under the sovereign immunity issue, and it didn't make any difference. Nothing is going to make him lead-free. Nothing is going to make him as healthy as he was before he was shot. And let's face it, we're talking about a very small number of people here. What about the people who are killed by people who got a gun because this body decided not to implement a law that would have prevented that person from getting a gun? Who's going to be in charge of the liability for that person's life? And those people outnumber the ones in the gun-free zones by a huge margin. So let's be concerned about everybody who dies from guns, not just specifically about how much money we're going to pay to people in certain locations only. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Phyllis Rico with the Virginia Association of Counties. We oppose these two bills. Sovereign immunity is a specific legal doctrine which has been in place and narrowly drawn for a very long time. These bills would not require arming local government or state office buildings, nor would waiving sovereign immunity, I think, have prevented this horrible tragedy that occurred. And for these reasons, we oppose these two bills.
Thank you. Can I say something? Sovereign immunity, if you had it enacted.
Sir, with all due respect,
You would have security in place because
with
of.
all due respect, these are the people that are waiting to speak in opposition.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Nikki Zamasi, Deputy Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security. On behalf of the administration, our hearts go out to all of the families in Virginia that are affected by gun violence every single year. Governor Northam has remained committed to addressing gun violence and has put forward a number of proposals that we believe will prevent these incidents from happening to ensure that this never happens to another family in Virginia. Unfortunately, we don't think that this bill achieves that goal, and so we are opposed.
All right. Discussion, questions from the committee. Delegate Price.
So, though it was previously mocked when my colleague said it, I also offer you my thoughts and prayers, being from Hampton Roads, as I do all of the families in my district who unfortunately on a daily basis, we have to deal with loss. And so even though it was mentioned that I would be a hypocrite for not supporting this, what I do feel is that the compromise from which you spoke could be addressed much like the Senate did in looking at some amendments to how the local option or local power bill could go forward. And so I'm open to having that conversation as a compromise. What I will also say is that when you start off, someone started off saying that everyone around this table was really here caring about the lives of Virginians. And I want to reiterate that. We definitely disagree on how to go about that, but that should never be in question, nor should it be mocked, nor should it be used against us as we're moving forward as we disagree about policy proposals. So I appreciate your ability to have friends that may be on my side of the aisle. And I look forward to I look forward to going back to Hampton Roads with some new legislation in place to really and truly help keep lives.
Thank you. This is not a political thing, this is a human right thing, it's the right thing to do.
Delegate Corner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And speaking, we can discuss,
Yes.
speaking to the two bills. I think Delegate Campbell's bill is in better form, in terms of scope of risk. Sovereign immunity is in place for the purpose so that we're also a fiscally responsible state, so that our interest rates and our bond ratings and our risk. But I would disagree with those from state agencies who spoke that sovereign immunity doesn't do the things on the front end that would have prevented some of these. Having served on local government, we all have risk management offices, and they are constantly reminding us of things we need to do because of the risk associated of being sued or the result of someone being injured. And they are constantly putting in front of us things that we can do on the front end to prevent our risks in the back end, much like businesses with insurance policies. You're required to state what you're doing on the front end to prevent the risk that's associated if something were to happen. So in concept, I'm very supportive of this proposal. I think it still has some more work to do in terms of possibly amending it to have even more specific causes of action, because I do think we have a responsibility to local governments that they very much know what the risk is if they do certain actions, a very specific cause. So I'm supportive in concept. I think it still has some more work to do. I would prefer Delegate Campbell's bill at this time, although it may still need a little bit more adjustment.
Delegate Davis.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, like my colleague, I also came from local government, and I'll tell you, I came in this room and I talked to the two patrons of the bills, and I come from local government. I know the importance of sovereign immunity. I've seen it used, and I said, I'm probably not going to be able to support this. And then just listening to the discussion, when you think about it for a second, the whole concept of sovereign immunity, and I mean, you can't be sued without consent. The monarch can do no wrong. And where is that ever true? I mean, if that was the case, we wouldn't be America right now. So the whole concept that you can't sue without consent, I think, is flawed in and of itself. I do agree. I think there isn't. We need to be able to challenge it and no more specific reason than when something like this occurs. To be able to challenge the idea of a government safe space of we're not going to protect employees when they come to work. Doesn't mean that the government is or is not